Hello. Well, greetings, fair two by two listeners. I'm here today with a fractional and a founder and just an all around fantastic person, Anna Wondany, who is a fractional CMO in the Bay Area, correct?
That's right. I'm
And
in the San Francisco Bay Area.
and also the founder of Hey CMO, which is a platform for people exploring fractional careers that she's recently launched. And so she and I came to know one another through some groups that we're in, and I thought she's solving a problem or a set of problems that I know many fractionals and independent consultants face. And she's actually tackled them head on. So welcome to the two by two, Anna. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here and I'm very excited to speak to your audience about what we're doing.
So let's kind of start how you got into this position in the first place. So before being a fractional CMO or founding your business, you had a long career before this in marketing. Tell us a little bit about that path and what led you into the fractional space.
I can go way back. I can tell you my very first job was when I was 16 years old and they gave me a clipboard, told me to walk around the mall and start doing surveys and asking people how they felt about certain things. At the time, I just thought this was really great. I'm making commission for every survey I'm producing. But what I quickly learned was that was actually my first stab at marketing, and it was market research at its finest. And so, really just fell in love with marketing from the get-go. Every job that I've had literally leading up to today has been in one way, shape, or form marketing. And so I've done everything from working clearly the mall, working in startups, doing email marketing, digital marketing, brand, and essentially have done 3 different exits. I've worked at startups as well as corporate structures. I've helped small businesses with their marketing efforts and with the ultimate goal of just how do you build, how do you scale, how do you grow and drive revenue? And so what really brought me into fractional work is I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty details, but my last kind of real corporate job, well, it wasn't really a corporate job even. It was a startup that we built from scratch and we took it from zero to double digits millions, in the six, plus million within 3 years, all through COVID. And what we ended up finding out was we were in the midst of a merger and the merger fell apart. And I was tired, right? There was so much politics involved in all that had happened over the course of that time. And so I kind of sat back and said, what do I want to do moving forward, right? I could have continued on with that role, but instead I decided I was going to go off on my own. And really just go and help companies grow and scale. That's really the core of what I enjoy as a marketer, and just going to help founders, small businesses build clarity and momentum without having to worry about hiring a full-time exec. And so I didn't know what that was called, right? I didn't want to tag myself as a consultant. And so I ran into this term as I was doing research of fractional. And I thought, all right, I'll coin myself as a fractional CMO and see how that sticks. And then I went off into my network and introduced myself as that. And I've been very fortunate since the start to be at full capacity. And yeah, and then that's kind of how I fell into this whole fractional world.
I love it. That's a very marketing leader approach, by the way, which is test and adjust. You almost A/B tested the moniker of how, it would be very difficult for me. So my work is primarily in commercial strategy and pricing and business models stuff. It would be very difficult for me to say I'm a fractional strategist. I've never used that because I don't think the term means anything in that space, but for marketers and CFOs, it certainly does. Did you find people knew what it was?
I found that people who were calling themselves fractional had a very clear understanding of what you were offering. What I found is businesses didn't really
Yeah.
understand it, right? You're going out and they're like, hey, we need a fractional. And I was like, okay, so what does that mean? We need somebody to run marketing and send emails and this and that. And so it was whoa, let me back up. Let me be very clear
There's a
about
lot that
what
happens, by the way,
fractional.
between running marketing and sending emails.
Yeah, but it's they're everything in between, right? We want the strategy all the way down to the tactics. And so a lot of this was also educating, right? As you're going in to introduce yourself to potential clients, etc., introducing what this concept is and where you sit within their org, and then where you draw the line. I think that was always, and I think it's gotten better today. Like I've been doing this for a few years now, and I think it's definitely gotten better today, but it still requires education. Like it needs fractionals to tell and educate businesses on the value of the fractional role, and then what you actually go out and do.
How do you, so let's go into a scenario. Let's say you're in a conversation with a potential client. How are you explaining the value of what you bring? And do you find they automatically equate it to time? And then you have to kind of move them into like, this is not about time. Like, how do you navigate that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, the question when it comes to time, usually the question that it equates time is like, what's your hourly rate?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I usually save that conversation to the very end. I start off the conversation with talking about like just strategically like the what we can provide you as an organization, right? Like I try to touch on pain points. Like usually I do a little bit of research in advance, get a sense of like where they are in their space or in their industry, and then I basically touch on pain points and I say like, my job is to be able to build out that strategy to help you scale and grow and take you to the next level. Whether that means you're actually trying to grow the business because you want to do something new, you want to launch a product in a new vertical within your space, or you're looking for an exit strategy, right? And you want to go and like get sold and find companies to acquire you. And so I try to get a good understanding of like what that looks like. And so the competitive advantage that I bring, right, or what I say is the value prop of a fractional is like we are fractional, meaning we are stellar focused on driving that level of growth for you, right? We cost less than full-time overhead. If you were to hire a full-time CMO, yes, we have high rates. And this is a caveat for us as in this conversation. But what you get is you get a strategic leader within your organization
Yeah.
without the full-time, headcount, benefits, and then they're coming in very stellar focused on just one thing, right? Which is like, how do we drive that growth for your organization? And then you kind of cut out all the rest of the noise.
Yeah. That's how, okay. So when I am, and Keenan Reed, so new listeners, I have a consulting business, which in that business, I do staff a number of senior strategy people. So they typically work 10 days a month, right? So they are true fractional strategists, although I can't use the term. What I describe is exactly what you said. And what I tell clients is it's really important that they're working on your biggest problem.
Yes.
Right? Like, don't
Yes.
use them because what I find is a little bit of a danger. Like, our teams are so capable that they can do anything. Like you said, sending emails. I'm sure you send amazing emails. You can create amazing campaigns. You can create all the dashboards in the world. And you probably can do it 5 times faster than the person that they're working with. But I don't know. I find that sometimes when they discover our teams can do this, and in our case, it's like PowerPoint slides is the big one,
Right. Yeah.
right? That they tend to start shoveling that work over. And we have to be really, really clear of like, listen, I know it's easier when I do it, but it's not the biggest, most burning challenge you have. And that's where you need to deploy us, against that problem. Do they get that?
I think they do. And here's the thing. We have fractionals within our network who have shared that they've gotten pulled into the weeds. And
Mm-hmm.
now that they're almost like they're like, going down in quicksand, whatever the term is, right? Because they can't get themselves out of it. They're like, well, I've now said yes, I'm going to do this, and now I can't get out of that, right? And so part of this effort is like setting the expectation from the start of like what you're willing to do and what you're not willing
Yeah.
to do. And how I do that, right, is I always like whenever I start an engagement, I will say I'll present the strategy, here's what we're going to do. And then I will say something in the lines of like, who on your team can help us get this executed, right? So then you kind of create that delineation of like, you're just building this, you're going to drive this, but you're not going to actually like send out the email campaign. You're not going to go out and like segment our audience, right? Based on like, buyer needs or whatever. And so I think if you set the tone from the start, it makes the engagement that much easier. And because you have a clear understanding of what you're bringing to the table, and they have a very clear expectation of where you draw the line.
Yeah. No, we do the exact same thing. I try and where I can identify it up front in the conversation. For us, sometimes it's the like basic PowerPoint, but also a lot of email, like organizational
Yeah,
communication. What I'll say is,
totally
look,
get it.
we'll write it, we'll draft it, but do you have the person that can do the actual production on it and get them to name that person in that work? When you so let's go back. So you start looking for fractional roles and are successful. What were some of the biggest kind of surprises that you had in that first year?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I mean, I think a lot was very surprising that first year. You kind of go off and you have this vision of like what this looks like, what like this level of engagement will look like. I think what's surprising is that this like fractional model isn't more widespread
like
because
like
and the
people
reason
haven't
I say
discovered the hack.
people haven't discovered the hack, right? Like they haven't figured out like this is the key to their success. Because, I'll give you an example. Like one of my clients who I've been with for gosh, I want to say almost 2 years now, right? Didn't start off, it literally started with a conversation. A friend of mine called me and said, like, hey, I'm working with I'm advising this company and, the owners like are kind of stumped on marketing and they just want to talk to a marketing expert. Like, do you mind taking a phone call? And I walked in, no expectations. First of all, I always say yes. Like, I'm
Yeah,
happy to
yeah, yeah.
help, whatever I can do, right? So I get on the call and he starts telling me all his pain points and like all these struggles that he's had. And I'm just shooting ideas, right? Like, well, you should do that. Like, this makes sense. You should do this. And he was like, what do you do again? And then I kind of went into like the fractional model. Again, not a pitch, right? It was like, they were a smaller size company. I didn't know how much their budgets were and so forth. But literally by the end of the call, he was like, well, can I hire you? And for me, like that first year, it's exactly what you said. Like nobody's figured out that the hack for a small to mid-sized business to be able to take their business to the next level is to hire a fractional,
Yes.
right? Like you don't have to have a whole C-suite of employees. You could bring on a fractional for a 6-month engagement, whether it's marketing or product or ops or even HR, right? Like
I'm going to throw
I work with
strategy into that. Okay. And I'll tell you why in a second. Not in a small company, but yes, the hack is there.
the hack is there. And so for me, that first year was really surprising because I don't think it's a lack of, we have fractionals out here who are looking for their next opportunity, looking for their next role. I don't think it's a lack of work. I think it's a lack of companies realizing how this fractional model actually can value them.
Yeah, I think of it as you're deploying, well, for us in our case, because it is the concept of what a strategy person does is much more amorphous than any
Yes.
of those functions that you mentioned. So when I position it as imagine it's strategic capability at a service. It's a
Yeah.
capability as a service. And the lack of that capability, right? You have it. That's why we're having
You
this.
have it.
You
Yeah, it
know
exists.
exactly how that
Yeah.
feels. Imagine if you didn't have that lack anymore. Like that's what we're solving for. So biggest challenge, lack of capability. Okay, you said something I want to go back to. You said I always say yes, and I always say yes too. But a lot of people don't always say yes because they worry up. I hear that they start to concern themselves very early on with being paid for time or being giving
Yes.
away for free. Why do you always say yes? Like, because there's two camps on this.
My example earlier is a perfect example, right? I walked into a conversation and don't get me wrong, this was a really busy period in my life where I was like, I was I was trying to figure out how to serve clients the right way and like, I'm going out and pitching and I'm starting to like mentor and coach like other fractionals like for free, right? Like I was doing all this for free at the time. And so when my friend called and was just like, "Hey, do you want to take on this? Like, just have this conversation." I honestly, in my head, he literally said he has no budget. He, just wants to talk to a marketer and get get a new perspective. And I didn't even hesitate. I said yes. And look what that led to me.
Mm-hmm.
Led me, right? It led me to a new client. I love working for this company. Have seen it grow quite significantly and like transform over the last couple of years. And so that's a perfect example of why I always say yes. You just never know when your next opportunity is going to come. You never know what that path is going to bring. And if if all things fall apart and you end up down like some crazy rabbit hole, what it's giving you now is perspective and a new learning,
Hmm.
right? And then you can take it and say, like, okay, maybe it's not yes, like fully. It's maybe, yes, I could find you support in other ways,
Right.
right? But I will always provide that level of support wherever it's needed.
And this is why you're at capacity and you've started a new business. I think, okay, so the words in my head are I'm expanding. Whenever I say yes, I'm expanding my surface area, right?
Yeah.
I'm the sphere of me could be the tip of a pen or could be the size of a planet.
Yeah.
And the more I say yes to conversations and short, I mean, we're talking an hour here, right? Like you can always walk away
Yeah.
at the end of an hour. At the end of the hour, it's more interesting. I just always keep on saying yes. Like, and I find I say yes to, I don't do work with startups. Like I personally won't.
Yeah.
That's a personal choice. And it's actually more about the fact that I don't think I can help them. Like I'm an enterprise person, but I will say yes to just a phone call with the founders or,
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean,
Exactly.
if it
Yeah.
gets to a half day, that's when I'm like, that then you got to be paid. Okay. Like we'll get into it. But I don't know. I think people think about the dollars too early.
You know, I maybe I'm fortunate, right? Like that's not what it's not the driver for me. Like I'm at a point in my career where for me it's the satisfaction of what I get to wake up every morning and do, right? I love marketing. I'm always thinking about it. Like, you know, I'll go into a restaurant and look at a crappy menu and I'm like, oh my God, like who can I talk to about even just because it's such a representation of your brand, right? Which is the restaurant. And so I think about it all the time in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. And I'm fortunate now where I'm at a point in my career where it's not so much, sure, a paycheck is great, right? Sure, revenue is great and all of that. But it's like, that's not the driver for me. And what I've learned, and you know, I know everyone say, oh, this is like what everybody says. When you lean into like saying yes and not leading with that money mindset all the time, great things come,
Hmm.
right? You meet great people, you run into great opportunities. And I think there's just a different level of satisfaction in life you get when that's not what your driver is.
Yeah. Okay. So then if you're coming from a place of abundance, side note here, like, so as a person who thinks about business models, nobody can take me to Disney World because the whole time I'm breaking down. Why is the fast pass this way? Look at the size of that line. Look how they
Yeah.
structured their operation and the app to funnel people around the park. And now I mean, like, my husband is like, I literally can never go back with you because I like critique the business model of any place I go to. And my favorite one is Disney parks because I think they've like created this level of complexity in dollars that's insane. So anyway, you never go with me and Anna to any kind of
Yeah,
a
don't take
complicated
us
thing where
anywhere.
they're
You can't
selling
take us
things.
anywhere. Yeah, that's really what it is. Yeah. But
So
I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
yeah. So if you say yes to so many things, all right, there's a lot of struggle with a fractional career with time balancing. Different clients just innately create that friction. Plus, you're selling your own work. Now, plus, you have another business. How do you mentally, or do you have tactics to help manage all of these very, very different types of activities and the context switching between them?
So systems and processes, right, is what I live my life by. Like, and without that, it would be like absolute chaos. And so I want to, it's actually a really good segue in introducing what Hey CMO is. So like this whole yes approach, right?
Mhm.
Let me tell you a little bit about like this, like my fractional journey and kind of how I ended up building Hey CMO. So as I said, I went off and became a fractional. Didn't know what that looked like. Didn't know what I was going to do. And like day one, I put something out. I'm not a fan of LinkedIn. I'm not going to advocate for it, but I did post something on LinkedIn and said like, hey, I'm excited to announce I'm going off as a fractional, da da da, right? And I'll tell you the story. I think it's really funny. A woman that I hadn't met, I hadn't spoken to, seen, engaged with in over 10 years, saw my note and sent me a personalized note and said, I've always enjoyed working with you. You've always been fantastic. I wish you the best. She goes, too bad we just hired a CMO, right? And I said, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. I clearly missed the boat on that. But I said, when your new CMO gets in their role, I'm happy to have a conversation because I have some really great ideas about like what you guys can do like to grow and scale. And so she goes, let me connect you with our CEO. And then, like, we'll take you up on that, right? Sends a note, an email to her CEO, includes me, says, hey, this is Anna. I've worked with her in the past, da 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 da. And the CEO goes, hold the phone. We didn't hire a CMO. We hired a marketing director, right? To oversee like PR, content, and all of this. She goes, I would love to have a conversation with you whenever you're open to it. Had a conversation, and literally the day that I went out and like announced that I was a fractional, I landed my first client. And it was the fact that I went out above and beyond, right? I could have just said, oh, too bad, you already hired a CMO. Let me know if that doesn't work out. I was just like,
Yeah.
how can I give? How can I do more to help you, right? And again, I had no intentions of like trying to land this client. I was just ready and willing to have that conversation. And so basically, like, I share that story because it's kind of led me to where I am today. I joined an accelerator program early on, and I found like early on in that accelerator program, I was getting like accolades of highest revenue generator, highest closer, like da 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 da, right? And then what ended up happening is a lot of the fractionals in that space who hadn't landed clients, who were still kind of waiting and trying to get their first big deal, would come to me one on one and say like, how are you doing this? What are you doing? And I would literally sit there with each of them individually, right? And just take any calls at anytime I could and try to help them navigate the space. To the point where my husband was like, what happened to the work-life balance you're trying to create for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, this is great. You're helping a lot of people. You're doing it all for free and it's taking up all your time. And so I did not feel good about charging people for like mentoring, coaching or whatever if they're not making money, right?
Yeah.
And so then he was like, you need to figure out how to amplify what you're doing and what you're offering. That's how Hey CMO was born. I was to the point in my fractional career where I was deploying fractional marketing teams
Okay.
within
Yeah.
organizations because I was at capacity, and it goes like, how do you grow beyond yourself? And so I deployed them on my project, which is like, let's build a site that has tools, resources, services to help people who are entering this fractional journey either like launch, scale, and grow their business.
Mm-hmm.
And then people started asking like, how do I join? How do we build a community? And so then about a month ago, we launched the Hey CMO Fractional Network, and we bring in basically it's application only. So again, we want to cut out noise, but the point is like we bring in fractionals who are like looking for support, right? To be able to grow and scale and then thrive alongside each other. So now the onus is not just on me, it's like on all of us to be able to support and uplift each other through their journeys.
So you have, I was going to say, I think you're also a delegator. You have a team behind you. It's not just the Anna show.
Now I
You,
do.
is your team
Yes.
supporting both businesses or have you separated the teams?
Now they focus solely on Hey CMO.
Okay.
And that's because it's just more like more work. And then for me, I still serve as a fractional. I actually have taken on like bigger roles and now within organizations. And so, but that's kind of my where I sit. Really, where I want to lean into is like what I can do from the Hey CMO perspective, because what I realize is I'm able to help a lot more people on that side of things. Like, when I say that, it's like when you're a fractional, you can help two or three, depending on what your load is, right?
Yeah.
Two, three, four clients at once. So you're helping three, let's say three companies grow and scale. With Hey CMO, I can help a dozen fractionals, right? Times three, because they're all serving their companies to be able to help and grow and scale their businesses. So that's 36. That's
Mm-hmm.
exponentially larger than what I can do on my own. And so I love the power of that, right? Of like being able to help them serve their clients, help them generate their revenue, and help them grow.
Who are the people that are, you, in your opinion, get the most out of joining a group? It could be Hey CMO, it could be other groups. We know there's others out there. What is it when they get started? Is it after they have their first client? Does it matter? What are the kind of things that you think someone needs to, do they need to have anything in place or come in, cold off of their last job?
So I would say at any point in their journey. So we have a bunch of recommended vendors and partners. We have a marketplace where we vetted, like, let's say an AI note taker, right? We vetted it. So instead of you going out and doing research on 20, we've narrowed it down to like 3,
Yeah,
and you
your
can
tech
go in and
stack.
decide. It's like recommended tech stacks across the board.
Mhm.
And so the reason I say it's really across the journey, because you can come in, like, I had no idea what an LLC was. I've never done my own business, right? And so even that learning curve for me to start off, I was like, all I want to do is be a marketer. Well, you realize you got to learn how to manage your taxes. You got to learn how to like set up your business, right, entity and all of this. And nobody really like introduces you to that. There's not really I'm sure there's playbooks out there, but
Yeah.
it's not like a given, this is what you do, right? And in your scenario, this is what makes sense. And so we've tried to do as much of that. We actually have 3 playbooks, right? Launch, scale, and grow as part of some of the services that we sell within Hey CMO. But when you join the community, that's all free.
Yeah.
Like, you have full access to that. And I love that because, like, I met with one of our members yesterday, and he was just like, I've started to go through all this content. And he's like, some of it I knew and some of it I don't. And he showed me his like notebook of like, this is what I'm taking notes on. And so again, that's so satisfying for me because he's already an established fractional like
Mhm.
strategist, and yet he's still learning. So I think the short answer is like, I think you can be a part of Hey CMO, or whatever network you decide to join, right? This is not so much a push for me, all throughout your journey.
Yeah.
Because yeah.
So I agree. I've seen there's some common problems that everybody has in the first year. LLC is the question. Taxes is the next question. Contract is the next question.
Mm-hmm.
Pitch before contract, but how do I pitch? What's a contract? Rates is the other one. And that is, maybe if you're an attorney, you know more about the LLC. I didn't really struggle with the LLC because you have to learn business entities in business school. So I knew kind of roughly what to do. And I Googled to figure it out, right? And did it myself.
ChatGPT, yeah.
Right. Well, I live in Texas. It's a little bit easier here. I had to set it up in Washington State, and I learned why people get help. And in Illinois, it's different by state.
Yeah.
It is simple in Texas. If anyone's interested, you just go to the Secretary of State website. It's like $300. But and actually, we'll put some of our articles that we've written in the newsletter about these topics in the show notes, so people can just go and see kind of what I did. Those are all common. But then there are, I like, you kind of start your business and you get through that. But then I find people fall into clusters. It's like you could have been doing this. I've been doing it 10 years. You could have been doing it 1 year. We may have the exact same problem, which is I have high anxiety around cold outreach, or to better yet, outreach of some older man I have not spoken, or not even older, peer man that was not a friend that I haven't spoken to in 5 years. I'm not reaching out to them, and it is a problem for my business.
Yeah. I hear you.
Right. But there's other people who say, well, that's, I don't have any problem with that, but I can't figure out how to organize my cash flow. Right. Well, I don't have a problem with that. I'm super organized around cash flow, but we kind of fall into these buckets of types.
Yeah.
Um, and it's always nice to meet someone that doesn't have your same problem, to like, it kind of speaks to the need for having groups and having a network to say, I know how to do this, but I don't know how to do this. Is there someone else that can kind of help me think it through? I've actually got a great connection with a woman who's kind of in the same place you are, actually. Like, has a firm. She's hired people underneath her. She's maxed out. She's a CRO. And whenever I talk to her, I think, God, she asks the best discovery questions. Like, she's clearly driving her business forward because she knows how to handle that first stage of sales. Whereas I stepped into having to sell work 20 odd years into a career,
Yeah.
and I never struggled with pricing. I could price anybody, or I can negotiate any deal. That's easy. But it's really nice to have that group. So I can imagine that people in these networking groups that want to talk to people actually get a lot out of finding those connections with others.
Well, it's funny, literally everything you said, like pricing, like even outreach, right? Even like the cold outreach, like how to set up your LLC, like cash flow, all of that. That's all covered in our playbooks. And it's because I based the playbooks on my
Oh,
experience,
me too.
right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
it was
tax
like
playbook.
it's like my first year, it still sickens me to this day because I'm pretty sure I gave away way too much money. because I didn't know that I could write off certain things, and I didn't
Oh,
know I can write like, and that was my mistake. Like I know that now. And my tax guy, who's been, God bless him, he's been serving us for like 20 years, has always been fairly conservative, right? And so
yeah.
when I bring my like, when I started this business and I learned and I realized, like, I was talking to what a partner, one of our vendors, they're called Uprise, and they're a really great, like, they're certified financial planners, whatever. And so I met with them. I don't even know how I got introduced, but I met with them. I met with their CEO. I met with the certified financial planner, and they were like, this is what you like, as a business owner, these are the things you need to lean into. And so what I did, again, perfect example, right, of like how I want to help. It's like I brought a webinar, like we set up a webinar with them, and it was a fireside chat. It was
Mhm.
me like moderating it, but literally ask them anything you need about your finances, about taxes, about business. And so it's, again, to help provide that level of clarity for
Yeah.
everybody, right? And so I think there's still, like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, entrepreneurship is hard, right? Like, you learn a lot along the way, you make mistakes, you pick it up. And so the goal here is not to make sure everybody's journey is perfect. It's to try to like learn off of what mistakes we've made and try to ease that journey a little bit, right? Like smooth out that road of like bumps and lumps.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I mean, again, I just think that, like, there's so many learnings that we can share. And so like when the network effect is real, right? When somebody comes into one of our network meetings and they bring a problem, because we have like an office hours, like ask me anything, but it's not me, it's ask the group anything.
Hmm.
And they pose that. I love hearing everybody's different perspectives on like how to solve that problem, or like what their experience was when they ran into that problem,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's refreshing. I love hearing that. That's what really motivates me to continue this journey.
Yeah. I am thinking the one, okay, so let me give you this one because this is, I think, unique to some of us OGs. I left, this is my, and I'm thinking like maybe I should kind of write on how I've handled this over the last decade. So I left my corporate job in 2014 and started independent consulting then. What I didn't think about, and then within 3 years, I was making 2x a year what I
Yeah.
was making in my director level job at a Fortune 500 company. So there was no going back, right? Like financially, I
Yeah.
had proved the point. Now, 10 years later, what happened? What happened was I had a couple of people from my past. So I think, I'm ex big consulting. And then I have some friends from business school who have become Fortune 500 CEOs, a couple people who are VPs. And what I didn't think about was RSUs. So restricted stock
Yes.
units. Okay. It did never dawned on me that one day that they were going to get paid. Like, had I stuck in that path, had luck been on my side, like, I think capability was there, but I think it's luck above a certain level and your ability to work the politics and the skill set's different. But let's say, could I have done that? Well, yeah. I mean, there's high probability. I would have left all that money on the table. One thing, I look back and I tell myself it's not that bad. Well, maybe I'm not where those CEOs are. Different story. But at the executive level, what I did was I didn't spend all the money and I used a lot of the time that I would have been using in meetings to actively manage our investments, to actively manage our, like, what my husband does for a living, our tax situation, and some more advanced strategies. I think people don't, high performers that go into these careers, and the ones that go in earlier, right? Not the ones that go in their 40s, but the ones that go in their 30s, they got to be thinking about what are you leaving on the table from a non-cash perspective, and how do you make the
Yeah.
cash in hand actually start to work for you, so that when you're 40, like late 40s, you look at it and you're like, okay, this was a smart financial decision to go on my own. And I've never heard anyone else talk about this, to the point where I was looking at the Inc. We made the Inc. 5000 this year. So I
Yeah,
the average people,
congratulations.
great. But like, I'll tell you how that really works if anyone wants to know. It's actually not that hard. But I started looking, oh, wait a second. You basically like buy awards. Like, okay.
There's
So
that. Yeah.
there's a female 500 award as well, female founder 500 award. Okay. So you should look at this. And I started looking who else has won this award, and is there anyone else in Austin? So of course there are. I mean, some is like Kendra Scott, like good
Yeah.
for her. We're not
Some who
making
didn't
fun of.
buy, yeah, who didn't buy
There's a
into it.
woman
Yes.
who, by her photo, looks to be a generation ahead, who has built a kind of similar business to me. And I was like, I bet she's thought about all these things. Like, what if I could meet Ellen Wood? If you're out there, I'm coming to try and meet you. Like, what if I could meet Ellen and ask her these questions that I wish what she wished she knew, 10, 15 years ago? It would just be
Yes.
incredibly valuable. And I think people in the communities now that are getting started, they at least are benefiting from people like you who have been 5 years in role, some others of us that have been doing this for, 5 to 10 years. So that look ahead is pay attention to the RSUs, people.
It's, and it's true. It's funny. Even with my kids, right? Like we've set up their Roth IRAs, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, like because it's, again, I didn't know any of this stuff, right? Like you kind of fall into it because I grew up in a very Asian household, right? It was like very strict, like do the best you can in school, get straight A's. If you don't, it's not good enough. You graduate college, and then you go off and find a job, right? And so I remember when I told my mom for the first time I was going to go out on my own, like she's like,
This is a
what
great
it, like,
story. Okay, yeah. What
right,
happened when you
right.
told what
It was
happened?
like,
She's so
well,
if you're not watching, Anna's making a face.
it was exactly like the face says it all, right? Like it's kind of one of those reactions, like because we don't do that, right? We follow a very like blueprinted, that's gone for generations. You find a job, you do well in your job, you are kind of subservient to this corporate world, right? Like, and like you get the job done and you get to retire. It's not this like, oh, you could go be creative and you can go like, so I remember her thought was like, well, how are you going to make money? Right? Like, what are you going to go off? And in her head, like being an entrepreneur, it's like me probably standing on the corner somewhere with like a coin, like a jar asking for money because it just wasn't a reality. Like, it's not a thing. Right? And even at the point where I surpassed my income, and I surpassed like, and I had full control over everything I was doing, you could tell there was still skepticism,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to this day, like she'll be like, with her accent, like, oh, how's your business, right? And it's like, it's not just a business, like this is my livelihood, this is what I'm building. And so I think it's just also very different because you're like, for me personally, I'm going against like what my perceived path is supposed to
Yeah,
be,
that's hard.
right?
Yeah.
And you also don't learn about like how to manage your money like early on, right? Or like how to set yourself up for retirement early on. Like my kids, I tell my kids, like, my oldest is 20. I don't know how that's happened because I'm 25, but I tell him like, you need to not only put money away in your savings, like you're going to allocate money into your Roth IRA, right? And he's like, retirement? Are you joking? And I'm like, God, if only I had done that, right, in my
Yeah.
20s. If I only had the foresight or the guidance to
I
like
know.
have that. And so again, you learn, right? It's all learning experiences. And like now it's like I'm trying to do that for my kids so that they have a sense of what the importance is of that.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. RSUs, like even equity, right? Like,
Equity. Yeah. I mean, you're in the Bay Area,
right.
so like you probably don't think about it always in the same way. Like, Microsoft RSUs would have that I got 8 years ago
Yeah.
when they offered me a
Yeah.
job would have been worth.
I had a friend, I remember I had friends in high school who were like, my grandma gifted us like Apple stock. And people were like, what? They're fine now, right? Like they're doing well now because again, it was like that level of like foresight from and like what you value. Now, granted, I'll tell you a quick story. I actually went permanent into a company last year, and I'll tell you why. I continued to serve as a fractional, right? But this was actually a fractional client. This was I'm not going to go into the details because they're still privately held, but they've only been around like a handful of years, like 2 or 3 years at this point. And they were valued at a really high valuation, right? Like, and I was impressed by like the way things had gone within this organization and how well it was run. And so I basically said, as part of my compensation, I want equity and I'll take that risk. Like, you could reduce my cash, give me some equity. And they were like, we'd love to do it, but you have to be a permanent employee to make that happen. And so I joined as a permanent employee, all the while still serving as fractional roles, right? The scale of what I did didn't change significantly. Like I was still like, it was still the same goals and so forth. But I did that for exactly what you said, because I'm like in my head, it's like, I'm trying to predict the future. And if it all goes to shit, so be it.
Yeah.
But you take that risk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In
I
hopes
love the
for a big
parent
reward.
conversation. That's a question I should ask a lot more people. I had the hardest time, like my biggest fear was telling my dad. I mean, my family is, typical. Well, they're not quite typical. They're all wombled and they're a little strange, but same thing. Entrepreneurship is not the game that the family has played. And my dad had these plans for me, right? I think they were not hard, maybe as hard and fast as your mother's, but it was, well, first you should go try and be an investment banker. That was like his first choice, right? Well, first it was a doctor, and that was kind of me, so we didn't have to push. Then it was, well, yeah, maybe an investment banker. Well, why don't I just like introduce you to this attorney you can go work for, right? Like we kind of went down the career path.
Yeah.
And then, I was at BCG, and that was like, I'd finally like done kind of what I was supposed to do. And then when I decided to, like, that was a hard conversation where I could tell he was like, well, good luck to you. The best part is I go
He's like, I
shopping.
tried.
I'm like, it'll be fine. I go shopping with my mom. This is literally like 4 years ago. And my mom and I are at Nordstrom, and it's the middle of the day. And I'm like buying, I don't know, clothes or whatever. And she's like, oh, can I pay for it? And I was like, Mom, I don't need you to pay for my
Yeah.
clothes now. Like I actually like do okay.
Yeah. I actually make some money.
And
Yeah.
don't tell
I can
daddy I'm
afford
buying
it.
your clothes. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm 40. Like, you know what I mean? Like, tell me. Oh my God. But the parent
Yeah.
thing, that's a good
Yeah,
one.
I have a really high respect for families who like have been entrepreneurs. And it's the opposite, right? Like I feel like if it's in your blood, you almost can't go back. And then it's a look on you if like you take on a job,
Yeah, I say
right?
now, like I'm feral. There's no way like somebody could actually hire me. But yeah, not coming from a family that's in that background that's a good topic. Okay, cool. Well, I want to wrap us up here, just being conscious of your time. And I'm so appreciative
Yeah.
of the amount of time you've given. I think I could go on and on and on with you next time. Well, I won't ask you on recording. I'll connect with you after to figure out how we meet in person. But this is great. I want to know, what do you think is next for Hey CMO? Like, do you want to keep it with this like nice tight group of people? Do you want to expand like the amount of people that are in it? Do you want to take it in a like a more like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I want it to be the go-to resource for fractionals, right? Whether you're part of the network or you're just looking for resources, services, partners, vendors, I want you to be able to come and trust that we've done everything we can to build this platform up for you as a fractional
All
or a business
fractionals, not just
leader,
CMO.
all
Yeah.
fractionals. How I think of our network is like, and I'll speak on this because I know this is on a podcast as well, but I think of a really large circle of people, right? But you have the opportunity to be part of this network where you can slice and dice it in multiple ways. Fractional CMOs can segment each other out. Folks in Austin can segment each other out. And then you kind of create these little cohorts where even though if and when the network gets larger and to the point where it feels like, at capacity, it can still feel small,
Yeah.
right? So like
You
for
can find your
me,
people.
you can find your people, and it's not all fractional CMOs. I'm a fractional CMO, but I partner with a fractional COO on things where we go to market on certain things. And I want you to be able to come in and know that there's opportunities within the network to be able to partner with other folks because you all work on B2B SaaS or
Yeah.
you work with fintech companies. And so that's my vision, and that's what I'm aiming for, is to grow this network where it's big, but it can feel small.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. I think, no shade to some of the other groups out there. I think your intention here seems very pure and like from the right place. And I really appreciate that. Just being honest. So thank you on behalf of all of us. No, I think it's great and such a wonderful resource to people. I wish that I could be more community focused, but I'm just not. It's just not me.
No, I love being connected
No,
with
I
you,
mean like
Lauren.
how
And so,
I
yeah.
originally started all this thinking like kind of the same thing you're thinking. The reality is like I'm not the right person to execute it. And I'm so glad that the universe gave this idea to you, because I feel like you're such a better steward of this and it's such a need. And I'm just so grateful that somebody has done it and is doing it the right way. So we'll put
Well,
Hey
thank
CMO
you.
in the show notes for those people who are interested in just checking it out. And I think what Anna didn't say is that some of the resources are just available one-on-one. So it's not, you
It's free. There's a ton
right?
of free
It's not
resources on there for
necessarily that you
sure.
have to join the community. There's a lot of other stuff there I think anyone can take advantage of. Anna, thank you so much for joining us. That's it for today. That's a pod.
Thanks, guys.